Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with How to Beat. Today's How to Beat is on 0-2, well, part 2 of 0, the Bravest money game. So, yeah, we're back to the Zaizen group's death battles, so let's see if we can survive these things again, shall we? So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go!
If you were trapped in a vicious tournament where you can become a trillionaire or die trying, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat every death game in 0, the Bravest money game, part 2. This death game competition is about to get out of control. 0 here is a genius thief that's entered the tournament for 100 billion yen and the chance to become the chairman of the biggest company in Japan. He's only gained one ring after surviving 3 terrifying games, but the mastermind running the show doesn't want him to win at any cost. 0 is about to enter another challenge when a player tells him that his fiercest competitor, Shirube, wants to talk. Meeting the kid in private, the boy offers a ring as thanks for saving his life in the last game and proposes to team up so they can take down the Zaizen Corporation together. The man doesn't want to abandon his friends and turns his offer down, but soon he'll have to beat 4 death games that are more challenging than he realizes. Later, the man meets up with his teammates and they go around the park searching for another challenge, but discover that almost all of the venues are closed. It's strange, but that's when he notices a gate opening and with no better options, decides to go check it out. The group...
Oh boy. Well, I could pretty much guess what's going on here. Looks like the Zaizen group about put 0 here in the toughest games to try to get rid of him. Remember what he said. The Zaizen group don't want 0 to win, since, you know, money thief. I mean, I'm gonna go back to the last time we were here. Remember, I think I remember the dude saying, like, if we told them, like, we don't want to be part of the Zaizen group, well, if we just have the money, if we win, we'll just take the money and just let their top pick have the spot, you know? I don't know. Like I said, could be me. Anyway, hold on.
Walks up and notices that this game is set to the hardest difficulty. Only 3 people can participate, but they'll each get 3 rings if they win. 0 thinks it's too risky for them to play together and tells the others to split up and find an easier challenge. Frustrated, his friend takes it personally and rushes out as the others follow after him, but they'll be glad they took his advice. Determined to win, the man is about to enter the game by himself when the nerd Hiroshi comes back to volunteer. He'll do whatever it takes to help his friend win, and that's when another player, Yuki, arrives, insisting they let him join. With that, the doors open, and the players walk into the venue, seeing a large contraption in the middle of the room. They're told to lay down on this bed where they're strapped inside, with no idea this is actually a death trap. The lights suddenly turn on, and a man welcomes them to the game, introducing himself as their host, Kotaro Hill Mountain Williams, Harrison Jaguar Satake, James Shiroyama. It's a ridiculous name, and he tells them they will be participating in a deadly quiz, where one wrong answer could kill them. Suddenly, a giant anchor drops from above, and the thief reaches out to touch it, discovering that it's razor sharp. The bed is suddenly moved, and the anchor starts swinging like a pendulum above their heads. The thief realizes that in this game, the anchor changes height depending on how they answer a question, and if they get too many wrong, their heads will be chopped off. Okay, 0 here should have expected this would happen. Right now, they're completely trapped below a swinging axe and forced to answer trivia questions, which is an extremely dangerous game to play. Earlier, when the group was searching for another challenge, they suddenly realized that every single venue was closed except one. This is not an accident, and it's clear that 0 is being funneled into a game that he had the lowest chance of winning. We already know that the chairman of the Zaizen group doesn't want 0 to win, and that's why if it were me, I would have followed Shirube here to see which game he would pick. Right now, this kid is the chairman's preference, and if we already have reason to believe we're being unfairly treated, it makes sense to only play games with Shirube so that we're mutually dependent on each other. This makes it harder for the chairman to stack the odds against us, and we're a lot more likely to survive. Now, this game presents a brand new problem for us, because there's almost no way to hack it or think outside of the box to ensure your survival. These players' lives are completely reliant on answering trivia questions, and we have no idea what kind of topics the host will be covering. It's reasonable to assume that with a bizarre name like this, the man is probably not going to be asking standard trivia questions, and that's what makes this game so deadly. This is like if you played Who Wants to Be a Millionaire at gunpoint with no multiple choice. It's impossible to win, but there might be one thing we can do to help ourselves stay alive. Once we are strapped into the bed, we have almost no options other than to win on their terms. That's why if it were me, before they strap me in, I would take off my shoes and hold them to protect myself. It's obvious based on the design of this rig and the gears you can see above above them that this is a death trap, and if we have something strong and sturdy to defend ourselves with, it could make all the difference.
I don't think that's
There's
gonna help
still a
with the
good
pendulum.
chance of getting severely injured, but the
Yeesh.
bottom of your soles could go a long way in stopping the blade's momentum, and if we're putting as much resistance on the blade as possible, there's a better chance of living. They might not let us do it, but we need to be trying everything we can to gain control in this game, or else we're completely at the mercy of the host. With that, the game begins, and the host tells the nerd he'll be answering the first question. The man directs his attention to this board with letters of the alphabet on it and explains the rules. They'll each take turns choosing a panel with one question, but they're not allowed to help each other solve it. Going first, the nerd selects the letter G, and the host asks what the smallest prefecture in Japan is. Hiroshi here doesn't know and guesses wrong. They've earned one down point as punishment, but for some reason, the anchor hasn't lowered yet. Zero here is the next to go, selecting the letter J, and he's asked, what does the F on graphite pencil stand for? He tells the host it means firm, and the man is disappointed to see he got the answer correct. The team has earned 2 up points, and it seems like things are going well, but that's when the nerd selects the letter N, and this was his biggest mistake. The slot suddenly shifts, and the host explains that in this game, there are 6 special questions that will change the anchor's position. If they answer correctly, it will rise up, but if they get it wrong, it drops closer to their heads. With that, the anchor stops moving, and the nerd is asked what image is on the back of a 1,000-yen note. Panicking, he tells him it's a crane, but the anchor lowers before continuing to swing. It was the wrong answer, and the host then explains that there are now 5 anchor questions remaining that are hidden across the board. Hearing this, Zero realizes that their best chance of surviving is to answer every special anchor question correctly, and already knows exactly where they are. The remaining letters most likely spell out the word anchor, but if the man reveals his strategy, the host will make it harder for them. Several rounds pass, and this time the nerd is about to choose panel R when he suddenly begins to panic, afraid of getting another answer wrong. If he chooses an anchor letter, they might die, but that's when Zero has a clever idea. Interrupting the game, he yells at his teammate for blaming him about the last question and insists Hiroshi has been useless, but it's all a trick. Confused, the nerd looks down and notices the thief making a hand signal that looks like a fox, as he realizes Zero is lying. Understanding his plan, the nerd chooses D instead of R, and is asked to figure out what day of the week the 31st of December is if January 1st is on a Monday. The nerd answers Wednesday and gets the question wrong, putting them 2 points closer towards decapitation. Yuki is chosen as the next contestant and picks the R panel, revealing it to be an anchor question, but that's when the host tells him to recall his full name. The man tries to remember but gets it wrong, and the anchor starts dropping lower, only inches above their heads. Okay, these players are screwed. So far, they've answered almost every single question wrong, and the axe keeps getting lower. We have every reason to think that the trivia will become even more difficult as the game progresses, and with these 2 idiots strapped in here with us, there's a high probability that we're all going to die. With this in mind, we need a new approach, and that's why if it were me, I would be trying to form a strategy to win without having to get any of the questions right at all. It might sound impossible, but from what we've seen so far, there might be one huge hack in this game that we can take advantage of, and it all has to do with these gears. If you look here, you can see that each tooth is separated by roughly 1 to 2 inches. Now, we already know that the regular questions earn up or down points, and when we get an anchor question, the axe position will change based on how many points we have. For example, if we have 3 up points and 4 down points, then by answering an anchor question wrong, the axe will drop by 4. From what we can observe, it's very likely that each point will rotate the gear by a single tooth space, which lowers the axe by about 1 to 2 inches. That's great news, because it actually gives us a way to predict exactly how many wrong answers it will take to get killed. Putting this information together, I would make sure that we answer as many anchor questions as we can before any points are accumulated, because even if we get all these questions wrong, the blade won't be able to move. If you look here, the axe appears to be at least 20 inches away from their faces, and so far, they've only managed to answer 2 questions correctly. That's why if we can use up as many anchor questions as possible before the host figures out the strategy, it will give us a much better chance of surviving. The biggest problem is that we aren't allowed to help others or influence their decision making, but there might be a clever way around this. Earlier, before entering the venue, they both saw a man with a fox shirt and and Zero tried to use this to communicate that what he was saying was a lie. Now, the problem is that this does not look like a fox unless you're already thinking about it. In a high-stakes death game like this, the amount of creative interpretation needed to understand this message is a totally unfair expectation. Right now, the most important information to share is where the anchor questions are. So if he were thinking clearly, the smarter approach would have been to secretly message both teammates, spelling the word anchor in sign language. It's safe to
Yeah, I think that's what I would have done. At least, yeah, I think with us, I think I would have just gone, certain, yeah, easy enough, because, I'm not sure if the host actually knows sign language, because it's over here in America and France, so, not too sure. Actually, is there Japanese sign language? I'm kind of curious now. Anyway.
To assume that these other players don't know the sign language alphabet, but some of the letters are very clearly represented in the shape of the hand. Even for someone who's not familiar with the symbols, it wouldn't be difficult to figure out the connection of these hand gestures to the panels on the board and start working together. By choosing only anchor questions, the blade won't move anywhere if they haven't earned any points yet. As long as the host doesn't notice what we're trying to do, then it's possible we can answer all 5 remaining anchor questions wrong and still walk out of this game alive with a ring. After several rounds, Zero finally takes his turn and picks O, but is surprised to discover it isn't an anchor question. The host must have figured out a strategy and changed the placement so the players can't win. It's a cheap trick, but he manages to answer it correctly, meaning they now have 5 up points in total. After several more rounds, Hiroshi picks panel M, and the host recites an old proverb asking what country the phrase comes from. The nerd fails to get it right, and they now have 12 down points in total. Determined to win, this guy takes his turn and selects panel K, revealing the next anchor question. The host tells him he has 15 seconds to name 8 idioms that contain the same word twice, but the player fails, and now it's time for them to die. He moves the anchor low enough to kill them and lets it swing, but that was his biggest mistake. It slams itself right into the bedding, and the men are relieved to have survived a brutal death. That's when Zero reveals that he knew this was going to happen all along. At the beginning of the game, he measured the distance of the anchor from the bottom of the bed using his arms, and figured out it started 72 meters above them. When it was moved, their heads were placed on a 5-centimeter slope, which changed this distance to 50 centimeters. Then by getting answers right and wrong, he was able to calculate how many centimeters each point would move the anchor, helping him hack the game. The host freaks out, insisting this isn't over and they can still lose, but he's suddenly interrupted when the chairman arrives. He declares them the winners, warning Zero that his time will come, and with that, each player is now one step closer to winning 100 trillion yen. That makes 4 games down, with only 3 more to go. The next morning, the thief and his friends find a large group gathered around the gangster. He's searching for 20 other players to join a game called the Witch's Manor, and if they win, they can each earn a ring. It draws the crowd in, and the guy reminds them that with Zero's help, they're guaranteed to get one. The players quickly gather around the thief, insisting he join them, and convince the man to enter the challenge. They all gather in front of the game house, and the thief quickly stands in front of the crowd, telling them to obey his every command while they're inside. The others agree, knowing he's their only hope of winning the game, but soon all 21 of their lives will be in grave danger. The men enter the venue where they walk into this room, and the announcer tells them they've just been locked inside. The only way to escape is to break the witch's spell, and with that, a timer starts counting down as the statue begins to shake. Suddenly, a paper slides out of the witch's mouth with a message, and the announcer begins reading it aloud. They're told to locate a series of numbers that have been hidden throughout this room and use it to escape, but are warned that one mistake can get them all killed. That's when Zero notices the gangster with his friend Yuki, and they insist on working by themselves. The man doesn't know if he can trust them, but with time running out, he directs the others' attention to the panel. This is where they can input their answer to break the spell, but they only have 2 chances to get it right. Okay, this is completely unfair. First of all, the timer started before anyone even knew the rules of the game. As we learned in the previous death games, every word of the rules are carefully chosen to hint at the solution, and if we don't have time to study the instructions, then we might be missing important information that helps us win the game. Starting the clock before you know what to do is a dirty trick, but that's not the only thing we're up against. The second problem is that the rules are extremely vague. According to this message, our goal is to locate a series of hidden numbers in the room and use it to escape. There are no specifics for how they should be used, but there might be one clue that everyone else is overlooking. With so many possible solutions, the most important thing to realize is that this device where they put in their answer only has enough space for 2 digits. This is a massive clue to help us figure out what we're looking for, because otherwise, we could have been wasting our time trying to find an answer that doesn't even fit into the space. This is not comforting, but that's why I would encourage everyone to split into groups of 3 and spend 10 minutes looking for different ways to find a 2-digit answer. First, I would recommend that several groups should be calculating the numbers on the soldiers here and connect it to the number 21. It's no accident that this game requires this many players, because it's such a specific number that we have to consider it as a possible figure in the equation. Secondly, I would then instruct the other teams to calculate the size and shape of the room itself. We learned in one of the previous challenges that the game maker will use the room shape as a part of the answer, and it might be a similar situation here. We want everyone to be working on a different approach, because having options allows your ideas to be tested against others, and the one that has the strongest case is going to be more evident by comparison. Lastly, the rule mentioned a series of numbers, and this is very important, because it means we don't have to look for only equations, but also patterns. This would make a lot of sense, because it means instead of having no information to work with, the game might have already provided us with what we need, and now we have to predict the next number in a sequence. The real goal here is to find out what these 2 digits represent, and if we can discover that first, then we'll be able to make the calculations in order to solve this death game.
Yeah. That actually is a good call. Measure the room, figure out, like, memory patterns. I mean, we got 4 walls, 21 players. Not sure how 21 might fit here, but you always gotta make sure, like, okay, how do we play this game? There's gotta be something we're missing here. Also, notice, like, the 2 behind the statue are sideways. Well, one's sideways, so I wonder what that means. It's definitely hiding something. Anyway, let's see what their process is.
Takes another look at the message, trying to understand if there's something he's missing, as the others inspect the knights on the wall. That's when Zero realizes that these numbers are actually a distraction, but he might know what to look for. He orders everyone to put their backs against the wall and spread their arms so he can make a calculation. Adding them up, he figures out that each wall is 14.14 meters long, and by using Japanese wordplay, he realizes it spells out a 9-number code. The answer is equal to the square root of 2, and if he's right, then the cannonball should represent a decimal point, while the knights stand for a number within the answer they're looking for. They need to find the 9th and 10th digit in the calculation to give them the final answer, but he has no idea what comes next. Confused, the gangster and his friend double-check his math, but that's when this guy notices something terrifying. The number 21 shows up in the square root, and by breaking it down with Japanese wordplay, he discovers a hidden message saying all 21 players will be massacred. Suddenly, one of the men keels over in pain, and they see he was stabbed by a metal spear, with more of them shooting out of the walls. They're getting closer, and the players begin to panic, trying to find a safe place to stand, with only 16 minutes remaining until they're impaled. Zero gathers them around, insisting they can figure out the 9th and 10th digits from the formula by finding the square root of 2. This should get them a number close to 1.9 recurring, and by gradually increasing the number of their calculations, they should be able to find the missing decimal places. With everyone on the same page, he shows them the method and requests that everyone do it at the same time to double-check their math. Later, the players submit their sheets, and he discovers that they're getting close to the answer. With their help, he verifies the calculation and discovers that the 9th and 10th digits are 23. With the numbers discovered, he approaches the statue and inputs 23 onto the panel, but that was his biggest mistake. Suddenly, a screen turns on and confirms that this was the wrong answer. The players are furious he's wasted one of their chances and don't want him to lead anymore. Desperate, he promises to help them win, but the group refuses to listen. These rebels think they have the answer and want to submit it, but that's when all hell breaks loose. A riot starts as the players approach the statue, and the thief's friends try to block them from getting everyone killed. At the same time, Zero checks the note for a clue, and realizes that the 11th digit might help them solve the puzzle. Suddenly, a pair of sunglasses crash to the ground, and he notices that there are characters on the side of the message written in the reverse. Decoding them, it reads, on the right of the 10th, the key is carefully cut round. Zero figures out the solution, explaining that they need to find the number on the 11th soldier and round it up or down like the code suggests. The answer 23 failed, but the number 24 sounds like the Japanese word for survival. He inputs the solution, and that's when the screen confirms they made the right decision, as the walls begin to pull back, but this game isn't over. Okay, this is
yeah,
getting
you
annoying.
really gotta double
Of all the
check the
possible
paper.
hidden numbers this guy could have found, he managed to figure out exactly what he was looking for, and it means this guy's plot armor is too damn thick for his own good. If I'm being honest, I don't think I'd have figured this one out, but there's one huge factor that gave Zero here all he needed to solve the problem. Before this death game ever began, this man was a middle school teacher, and that means when he hears a number like 14.14, he immediately knew it was the first 4 digits of the square root of 2. Being a freaking math teacher is a huge advantage, but what's more interesting is how he remembered all the decimal points that come after it. Now, one benefit to the Japanese language is that it uses a type of wordplay known as goto awase, which allows you to translate numbers into words and words into numbers. They use different phonetic alphabets like kunyomi and onyomi, and it can serve as a mnemonic device that helps them remember things like addresses and phone numbers. For example, this advertisement for a dental clinic has the number 6480, and if you interpret these numbers phonetically into the Japanese alphabet, it translates to no cavities. It's very clever, but the reason this is important is because if we use goto awase on the letters here, then the square root of 2 can also be remembered as night is the best time to people watch. As helpful as this was, it's exactly why they were missing 2 digits, because the mnemonic device for the square root of 2 that's taught in Japanese schools only goes up to 8. Now, Zero's method here is pretty much the only way to figure out the last 2 numbers without a calculator, but this isn't even the main problem. While everyone is waiting on him to provide an answer, they should have been going through the room and snapping the spears that are trapping the group in. As long as someone is doing the nerdy work, I would be making sure I had a guaranteed way to survive with or without the math. Nobody thought about this even once, and it was a missed opportunity. Now, if this group was paying attention from the very beginning, there's a good chance that none of them would be in this room at all. Before they all walked into the building, you can see there are Japanese characters written on the sign next to the entrance. In kanji, this can be read as dear and money, but the problem is that it doesn't make any sense, and that's exactly why there's clearly a hidden meaning behind these words. At this point, nobody realized that these 2 words together actually form an obscure Japanese character that says massacre. If they had realized this, it might have stopped them from entering the game, because if 21 people are required to join, it's very possible that most of them are going to die. I wouldn't take that risk, and that's why the smarter decision would have been to tell everyone that we need to find a different challenge. Suddenly, the witch statue starts to vibrate before it breaks down into a loose pile of metal. The lights in the room go dark as a new 3-minute countdown begins, but the group notices holes in the walls, realizing that arrows will be shot out of them and kill everyone still standing. That's when a new note is ejected out of the statue head, hinting that if they can figure out how the numbers 21 and 24 are related, then they might survive. Panicking, this guy picks up the scrap metal to defend himself, and the group follows his lead. But there isn't enough for everybody here. Thinking about the clue, Zero sees a metal frame on the ground and has an idea. He quickly draws out a diagram of the room with 21 circles inside a box and 24 circles on the outside, explaining to the group that they need to place the metal in the frame or else they'll die. With no better options, the group rushes to build a barricade and jump inside as quickly as possible. When time runs out, hundreds of arrows blast from the walls, but they never penetrate their shield. The plan worked, and all 21 players have beaten this impossibly hard game, making it 5 games down with 2 more to go.
That was close.
Relieved, the thief walks away with his friends to celebrate their victory, but that's when we hear an announcement that the student Shirube has won his 4th ring. The men gather in the main square wondering what will happen next, and that's when the student walks through the crowd heading straight for the thief. Suddenly, a loudspeaker announces that the game is not over, and each contestant will be given 20 minutes to find 4 rings before the final challenge begins. It seems that everyone has a fighting chance of becoming the new chairman, but Zero here is determined to win. They arrive at this game called the Lost Ring, but seeing how long the queue is, the others suggest they should pick a different game. This guy explains that he played it earlier and had to search for 3 small rings hidden somewhere in the room, but rumor has it nobody has ever found them. Hearing this, Zero decides it's the perfect game to join, and they wait until only 2 more players are left in line. With time running out, the guard announces they only accept 1 more person, and the man is about to walk inside when Zero stops him. He asks the player if he can take his place, and in exchange, hands him 2 rings as a trade. The man is shocked, but he agrees to let the thief go, and the guard leads him into the the next venue.
Alright.
Zero is brought into this room full of junk and is told the rules. There are 3 small rings hidden inside this room, but he'll have only 3 minutes to find them. The man is about to close the door when Zero puts his foot down and calls his bluff, insisting that this is all a trick. The thief explains that the game makers are misleading everyone to think that the rings never leave this room, when they're actually only inside before the game starts. That's when he realizes that the most likely place they're hiding is the outside doorknob, and he unscrews the cover to find all 3 rings. He solved the puzzle, and now has enough to play in the final round. Okay, this guy took less than 15 seconds to figure out the solution and managed to earn 3 more rings. It's extremely impressive, but if we break it down, you'll see that it was the most logical thing to do. First of all, it was definitely the right decision to choose this game because it's offering the most rings in the shortest amount of time, and they only have 20 minutes left. Now, you might be thinking that there's no way anyone could figure out the rings were inside the doorknob, but we have to assume that each game is winnable, no matter how difficult it might seem. If you look at this room here, there must be hundreds of trash bags, but the guard just told us that we only have 3 minutes to find the rings, so it's impossible to search through everything in that much time. This can only mean that we aren't meant to search through these bags at all, and you can extend that logic into the rest of the room as well. With such little time to play, this game only makes sense if you already know where you should be looking, and that's exactly how we can reach the same conclusion that Zero made. As we've already—
That's actually true. There's always a little hack to the games, you know? Whether it be, hiding in the corner in the ball drop, the, math easily in the last game. Like I said, there is easy ways to beat them, but you gotta be careful, And then remember back in the first game, the Zaizen group don't want a lucky break, If they won just based on luck, the Zaizen group's probably not gonna last long. Anyway.
Pretty seen in previous games, these people are very specific with how they explain the rules. When the thief walked inside, the guard told him that at this moment, there are without a doubt 3 mini rings hidden inside the room. This implies there are other moments when they aren't inside the room, and since they're mini rings, they could be hiding in something smaller than we would expect. We can also deduce that the guard is not holding the rings we are supposed to find, because he has intentionally kept himself just outside the room and didn't walk inside at any point. If we put all this information together, it's very logical to be looking for something that only takes 3 minutes to find and is currently in the room, but is also capable of leaving the room at any given moment. The only 2 things that meet this criteria are you and the outside doorknob. If it were me, I would first check all of my pockets to make sure the rings weren't planted on me at some point, but once it's clear that there are only 2 possible solutions to this puzzle, we have a pretty good chance of winning the game. The thief is led to the next venue where the student Shirube is sitting at a table in the middle of the room. Approaching him, he joins the player as the chairman's assistant announces that all their rings will be collected.
Here we go.
It's strange, but then a man walks up to him and he hands them over as the woman explains the rules. Each ring will be put into one of these boxes that they will take turns trying to break. To protect them, the players have 8 iron ring guards, but they're warned that each guard can only be used once. The first to successfully smash the other player's ring will be declared the winner, but if no rings are hit, whoever has more guards will win. With that, a blindfold is put over the kid's eyes as Zero chooses where to use his guards, placing 4 of them in the first round. Shirube's blindfold is taken off and he decides not to attack, predicting that all 4 boxes are protected. The others are shocked as the thief only has 4 guards left, and now it's the student's turn to choose which boxes to protect. The blindfold is taken off of Zero, and his opponent immediately tells him that he's only used 1 guard. That means he's got a good chance of hitting a ring, but the thief suspects this is a trick. Picking up the hammer, he carefully watches the kid and notices his eyes looking at a box. It must be a tell, and he slams down his hammer, but that was his biggest mistake. The box he looked at was actually protected, and Zero fell for the kid's trick. In the next round, the thief decides to use 3 more guards, saving only 1 left, and the student is about to bring the hammer down but stops at the last second and changes his mind. Hesitating, he swings the hammer at a different box, but it doesn't break. Shirube has hit one of the ring guards, and now Zero has 1 more chance to win the game. After setting up the next round, the student tells him that all 4 of them have been protected. The man thinks he's lying and slams the hammer into a box, but it doesn't break. The guard takes off the covers, revealing that the kid was telling the truth, and now there's only 1 round left to determine the next chairman. In the final round, the thief puts his last protector into a box, and the student furiously swings the hammer, but luckily he hits the only box that's been protected. Zero has 1 last chance to win, but the game makers are determined to make sure he doesn't. As the kid sets up his defenses, a staff member hands him a box that looks like it has a guard inside, and the student accepts. It seems like he'll take any advantage to beat his opponent, but soon the game makers will realize giving this to him was their biggest mistake. When the blindfold is taken off, Zero notices that he can see the protector through the crack here, and that's when the kid reveals that he's used 3 guards, but there isn't one in this box. The man doesn't know if the student is telling the truth, but decides to trust him and hits the fake box. The guard removes the covers from the rings, and everyone sees that Zero has smashed Shirube's ring. That's 6 games down, with only 1 more to go. He's beaten the game.
Wow. Do you think Chirube, the kid, was like, you know what, this isn't worth it, and just basically show, like, here, hit this box to win? Yikes. I guess even he wasn't, like, happy with the Zaizen group's trickery. Well, I guess he finally got some morals there, and now Zero's won the game, which is weird, but wait, didn't he say, like... Sorry, I'm trying to remember. It was like the most guards would win, right? And didn't they all use him up? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Oh boy, I gotta start like trying to remember this stuff. Anyway.
And the man is taken to meet the chairman to congratulate him on his victory, but suddenly clutches his chest in pain. Surprised, Zero returns to his friends and reveals that the man had a heart attack. They don't know what will happen to the prize money, but that's when the guard informs the thief that he's now the new owner of the Zaizen Corporation, according to the chairman's will. Suddenly, the assistant interrupts them and challenges the man to one final game. She's furious that he's managed to win and wants one last chance to see him fail. Okay, Zero is an idiot if he accepts this challenge. He's already beaten Shirube and won the competition, which means he's entitled to 100 billion yen, according to the chairman's last will and testament. This is the equivalent of over $700 million, and with that kind of money, there's no point to keep fighting. The chairman's assistant doesn't want Zero to gain control of the business, but if you think about how much work is required to manage the most successful company in Japan, I would gladly take my winnings and enter early retirement. Now, this wasn't the only mistake the thief made. During the ring game, his first move was to place guards in all 4 boxes, but if the man was thinking carefully, he would have realized this was a terrible strategy. Each player only has 8 guards total, and aren't allowed to reuse them. By immediately protecting all 4 boxes, he's giving his opponent a 50% chance or more of winning the next 2 rounds, because he only has 4 ring guards left. If it were me, I would have tried using deception and saved as many ring guards as I could for the last round. Now, you might be thinking this game has a lot more to do with luck than anything else, but that would be a mistake. One of the most important aspects of this is studying our opponent's expressions and using it against them. Shirube here has an excellent poker face, and it's hard to figure out what he might be thinking, but Zero, on the other hand, does not. He is giving up way too much information, and that's why if it were me, I would cover my face so that when Shirube removes his blindfold, he won't be able to read my expressions. It gives him less information to work with as he makes the decision, and we'll have a much better chance of winning. This would also be a good idea if we can get help from one of our friends in the crowd. If we can get them to observe where the kid's guards are, he can use hand signals to reveal their location, and if our face is covered, then the student won't be able to see that we're looking into the crowd for an answer. Another great strategy is to offer him information that we can control, because we know that Shirube will take it into account, and it helps us influence his thinking on our own terms. The kid knows that Zero is an honorable person and has been consistent throughout the entire tournament. That's why the best thing to do would be to tell him which box has a ring guard, but lie. As simple as it sounds, Shirube will now be forced to change his thinking completely, and instead of considering which box has a ring, he's now thinking about whether or not we are being true to our character or lying in order to win. This strategy...
Though, I don't know, if I was Shirube, I would have been like, okay, he is definitely trying... He's being honest, because if I know him, he probably doesn't want the Zaizen group. I don't know. Like, remember, the Zaizen group try to screw him over every time, so... Anyway.
Forces your opponent to play the player instead of playing the game. And if we can control the information we are letting out, we can influence them to make the wrong decision and take advantage. The group is taken to the final arena where the assistant is waiting along with her brother. She introduces the last challenge to Zero, saying it's a specialized game of poker called Day and Night, where he'll be given 26 cards of only clubs and spades, while she will have all the diamonds and hearts. Zero's friends are taken away, but this gangster stays behind to guarantee that nobody cheats. apiece. The assistant explains that there are 3 rounds, and each player will make 5 hands with the objective to guess which hand your opponent has made. You'll win points based on your highest cards, and if there's a tie, the victory will go to whoever's turn it is. That's when the assistant reveals a dartboard with card values and tells them that depending where their dart lands, their opponent must reveal those cards. The woman gets the first turn, and the players organize their hands on the table before the woman approaches the board. Confidently, she hits both of her targets on king and ace, giving Zero a bad start. He walks up to the board and misses the first throw, landing only a single dart on 8. The hands are finally revealed, and seeing the face cards, the woman easily calls out her opponent's royal straight flush. With the high ace, she has a 14-point lead and continues to call out his hands one by one. Frustrated, Zero takes a look at his options and manages to beat 2 of her hands, earning 22 points. But then the woman reveals her straight flush against his 1 pair, putting her 19 points ahead. She has this in the bag, but that's when a guard approaches her and reveals something shocking. The old man has declared that if she loses this game, that her brother will be killed as punishment, and the guard wheels her brother out of the room. The next round begins with Zero, and he throws his 2 darts on king and queen. The woman hits the ace and 7, making the match more even than before. Sege suggests that the thief wants to get rid of the royal straight flush first, but needs to figure out where the hell it is. Okay, this assistant is sneaky as hell. The woman forced Zero to play a game that she was already an expert at, and perfectly hit the ace and the king on the dartboard, letting her immediately identify his most valuable hands. It's incredibly unfair, but honestly, Zero should have seen this coming. He already knew the reward money was his, and the chairman agreed that the last player in the tournament would inherit the Zaizen group. Playing this game is already breaking the agreement, and if that's the case, then the smartest thing to do is use this as leverage to control what happens next. Before accepting her proposal, I would argue that she can't possibly play against me because she doesn't have 4 rings. In order to accept the deal, she would need to officially enter the tournament as a player and earn the right to play for control of the Zaizen group. According to the will and testament of the chairman, whichever player wins the competition will take his position in the company, and since she's not in the competition, she doesn't even qualify. Even though she's just an assistant, the woman still has a lot of influence and could outright refuse, but it's still worth a try. If any of these guards and staff members are loyal to the former chairman, they might take sides and force her to enter the death games in order to compete for his title, which puts pressure on her to take the competition seriously. It also gives us time to learn how to play this game, and in the meantime, hope the woman gets killed while she's trying to earn the 4 rings. Now, even if none of these tactics work, it's still possible for us to win, because just like in the last game, we can find an advantage by studying the behavior of our opponent. This woman has the upper hand because she knows how to throw darts, but Zero is much more observant than she is, and the woman doesn't realize she's already giving up way too much information. First of all, she's dressed in a ball gown, which makes it obvious that she's a power player who assumes everyone will play to their strongest hand. She even mentioned to Zero when explaining the game that on his turn, he should use his strongest hand to match her cards. What's interesting is that this is not the only way to play this game, and it reveals her own strategy more than anything else. If we know that she will play her strongest hands whenever possible, then we can use this against her from the very beginning. By arranging our cards and bluffing that they're stronger than they actually are, it will help throw off her strategy and destabilize the game, giving Zero more control from the very beginning. Zero matches her royal straight flush, and the tides are turning, as his next winning hand gives him a 49-point lead. The game goes on, but the woman begins to lose her composure and is about to make a terrible mistake. She throws down a straight flush, and Zero reveals that she's just matched it with his 1 pair. The woman has wasted her strongest hand, and now her opponent has all the information he needs to win the game. Next, Zero puts down his own straight, earning him another 9 points, and is a step closer to beating this tournament. It's the final round, and the woman begins by throwing darts, hitting the king, queen, and ace on the board. Zero, on the other hand, only manages to hit the ace, 7, and 8. The assistant notices a royal straight flush on the table and puts down her strongest hand, determined to beat him. Suddenly, Zero reveals it to be a hog, and the woman realizes she's just been tricked. She tries to counter his straight flush with her own, but that was her biggest mistake. Zero reveals a 1 pair disguised as a straight flush, and she's earned another 13 points, but lost her strongest hands in the process. The thief begins his turn by putting down his flush and guesses that this hand here is a straight. The woman is taken aback and insists he's wrong, but Zero explains that she has a habit of arranging cards in ascending order. This lets him predict what she's put down and attacks her with a straight flush, leaving only one pair of hands remaining. Zero throws down his last hand, and the final score ends with a tie. The guard brings out a deck of cards as the tiebreaker, and Zero here draws a king. Worried, the assistant carefully picks out her card, revealing an ace, and that makes her the winner. That's all 7 games down, with Zero as the loser. He's just lost his chance to become the new chairman of the Zaizen group, and the tournament is finally over. Later, the gangster confronts the thief, asking why he threw the game. He had the chance to win with a single hand, but chose not to defeat her. He doesn't understand why, but the man explains that he figured out the Zaizen group was going to kill the woman's brother if she lost. They tried to keep it a secret, but her reactions told him everything he needed to know, and decided to do the right thing. Zero may have lost the chance to be chairman, but at least he saved a life, and now he can spend his 100 billion reward money in peace.
But what do you
Notice how the gangster that originally got them in the mess, you know, the one that Zero had to hop out to help his friends with, was actually hugging him like, God, they got you back, you know, that. And they got him in. That was actually pretty good. And yeah, let's be real. I don't think Zero wanted to be part of the Zaizen group at all. You know? I think we can assume from that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you guys think. See ya.